Yoshio Tako of Tokyo Television reports that the giant god of Farou Island, an enormous gorilla known as King Kong, has been captured and is being brought to Tokyo.
What about the arrival of Kong?
King Kong has the strength to tear Tokyo apart with his bare hands. The government has no intention of giving him the chance.
What's going on, people? LP2000 right back at you with another video. Yes. Welcome back to another edition of Leslie Chambers Kaiju Reviews on behalf of Collect All Monsters. And oh God, you see this big, gigantic size, furry, brown, beastly monstrosity right here. Oh my God, this thing is great. It is so amazing. Let me get that out the way right now because you're going to hit it a lot during the course of this video. So you already clicked the title, you know exactly what and who we're covering here. So let's dive here first into this awesome resin model kit review. And today we take a look at the resin model kit of the Tony Cipriano sculpture of King Kong 1962, the winner of the awesome epic film from 1962, King Kong versus Godzilla. And as you can see, I have the beautiful figure here, or statue here in all his glory. Yes, the winner. And you're going to hear that a couple times in the course of this video, just to drive the point home about where I stand, who I think won that film, quite frankly. But yes, this is an awesome sculpture of King Kong from 1962's King Kong versus Godzilla. So I'm going to give a huge shout out and thank you to two special people for making this video happen. First and foremost, Charles Blankenship. Again, if you saw my last video of the Tenjitsu Crafts 1966 model kit, please check it out if you haven't already. Of course, I got that kit through him, you know, and of course the King Goji KOC figure, or the 55 KOC figure, you know what I'm saying, or the Resin Chef Mega Garrus. Again, if you saw my last video, like I said, of the 66, I kind of mentioned that, you know, he's been like my go-to guy when it comes to model kits. Since I've been kind of like going into model kits for the past year and a half, he's been like one of my main resources when it comes to these kits. So I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to him. And of course, Mark Sang-Yang, you know, you've heard his name many times on my channel before when it comes to him building and painting these model kits for me, at least several of them, quite frankly. So again, thank you to Mark, thank you to Charles for making this happen for me. And again, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Tony Cipriano sculpture of King Kong 1962. Now, before we get into King Kong himself, let's talk about the man behind the sculpt. And of course, I'm talking about Tony Cipriano. If you don't know who he is an awesome freelance sculptor, that has created some incredible pieces for Disney Studios, Warner Brothers Studios, DC Entertainment, Marvel Entertainment, Nickelodeon, Hasbro Toys. Man, just an awesome sculptor that's created so many epic pieces over the years, over the past 25 and 30 years from what I understand. And don't take my word for it. Go to his official Facebook page, Tony Cipriano, and you'll see thousands upon thousands of pictures of his awesome work that he has made of so many different characters, whether they're superheroes or maybe some classic monsters besides King Kong, or maybe some pop culture characters or icons, if you will. Just the work that guy has done, his resume is really incredible, and I highly endorse and advocate and really motivate you people to watch, or at least go to his Facebook page and see his amazing work. You know what I'm saying? And I got my hands on this collectible last year. And I feel really bad in a way, because I was hoping to get to this review last year, because last year was the 60th anniversary of King Kong vs. Godzilla. But again, I bought so many different things last year, and I was really limited with my time when it comes to videos and my duties on Collect All Monsters. I just couldn't find a way to squeeze him in. And again, I feel a little bit bad about that, but better late than never. But again, I do wish I would have got this guy on the 60th anniversary of King Kong vs. Godzilla. And I got this guy, I want to say, maybe a few weeks before G-Fest. Might as well say like a year ago around this time, quite frankly. And I had to send off to Mark Sang-Yang, courtesy of Charles Blankenship, because again, I asked him, do you have any model kits that you want to let go of? And he told me about this kit. And at the time, I was aware of this kit, but I wasn't aware, quite frankly. Because he told me about this gigantic size King Kong kit from '62, right? And I had no idea that this thing was around, but then again, I kind of did. So what he did was he told me to watch this video of John LeGrand. You know, John LeGrand, another great artist in our community. He's a guy that built the Tenjitsu Craft 66 in the last video, as well as the Resin Chef Martha Larva 64. But he put up a video where he actually done this very same kit. And I highly motivate y'all, I highly implore y'all to go and watch that video, because he did an epic job with that kit. But he also made some great enhancements and modifications to the original kit. You know, as you can see Kong here, you know, there's Kong holding the boulder on top of the base, right? But he also added some palm trees to simulate that the base here is Farou Island. He also added some miniature natives that he planted at the base of Kong right here. And he also planted some handmade octopus tendrils to simulate the octopus crawling onto the beach to make its way towards Kong, which basically what happened in the film. And it plays right into the sculpture right here where Kong is holding the boulder, about to throw the boulder at the oncoming octopus. You know what I'm saying? So I really, go check out that video. You will not be disappointed. But once I saw that, I was like, wow, that thing was amazing. Then I got my mind to wondering that I actually have seen this kit a few times before, going to G-Fest and going to the Kaiju Modelers table. I forgot what year it was, but I know I've seen this kit at the Kaiju Modelers table a few times before. But back then, even though I was highly impressed with the model kit, my mind wasn't into model kits as I am now. So again, it was great to see it, but again, I really didn't put too much forethought into want to get it or anything like that, right? I wish I did back then, that way I could have got it sooner, quite frankly. But then once I saw John LeGrand's video, I put two and two together, and I was like, yeah, Charles, I want to get that kit, you know what I'm saying? And I got this kit late last year around August. And again, I've been meaning to get to this guy sooner rather than later. But again, better late than never is what I always say. But again, that is the backstory about me getting this model kit. And again, going back to Tony Cipriano, you know, this is not the first Kong that he has done. You know, he has done other Kongs before, namely the original. And I have to be honest here, even though I respect the 33 film of King Kong, it's not one of my favorites, nor is Kong's design of that film is one of my favorites. But I have to say, like, the sculpts that I've seen Tony Cipriano do of Kong from that film, like, they're really, really epic, you know what I'm saying? So, you never know. If I can track down one of those kits, you know, I may want to add that to my collection, you know what I'm saying? So again, the guy has an amazing track record. His resume is off the chain. His work is flawless and just amazing in my opinion. And go to his Facebook page so you could be amazed just like I was doing research for this review, right? And honestly, King Kong here is not the only tokusatsu character that Tony Cipriano has sculpted. From what I understand from the research that I was able to piece together, he's also done both of the Gargantuas in like in a gigantic size scale. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if he's done a Godzilla, but I do know he has done a Gyra, he's done a Sanda, and he has done a King Kong here. But again, like his work on all these tokusatsu characters is really cool. And this kit originally came out back in 2019, and again, I was lucky to find it and was able to get it several years later. So again, thank you to Charles and thank you to Mark for making this happen. Now, I have to be honest here, I've only become a fan of this design of King Kong fairly recently. I probably would say maybe for the past 2 years. But up until that point, for the longest time, as much as I enjoyed King Kong vs. Godzilla, is one of the earlier films I saw in my days as an early fan that made me more of a fan, quite frankly. I have to be honest, I wasn't really a big fan of this design. You know what I'm saying? Now, mind you, you already know my history. My first ever Godzilla film that made me a fan was Megalon. Around that same time, I was exposed to other random show-up period Godzilla films. Monster Zero, Sea Monster, Son of Godzilla, Gigan 72, Mechagodzilla 74, you know what I'm saying? And right smack dab in the middle of me seeing those films, I also saw King Kong 1976 and Godzilla 1985. Basically, I was exposed to both Kong and Godzilla at roughly at the same time. Now, mind you, going from King Kong 76 and Godzilla 85, say what you will about the 76 film, but I think even the most jaded of fan will admit that the Kong design they used in that film for like his suit was actually a cool design. It was more updated, it was more modern, he looked a little bit more ferocious, you know, he was more humanoid, but he was more of a monstrous look. The same thing can be applied to Godzilla, even though he wasn't humanoid, but they gave him fangs, sharper claws, increased the number of the dorsal plates on his back, his face looked scary. You know, both designs of both Godzilla and Kong from 76 and 85 were great modern reinterpretations. You know what I'm saying? More realistic, ferocious looking reinterpretations. And right after I saw those two films is when I saw King Kong vs. Godzilla. Now, mind you, I was a kid, and it was fun seeing King Kong and Godzilla in the same film beating the crap out of each other. But even I back then was like, why does Godzilla look like that? Why does his head look like one way when you look at him head on and look differently from the side? Like, why is his head too small and his body is like too big? And in terms of Kong, I was like, why does Kong's suit look like it's been drugged by a pickup truck for 14 miles? So honestly, I wasn't really a big fan of this design of Kong growing up. I was more so of a fan of Godzilla. I came around more so to Godzilla design from 62 than Kong. But only when Roto Kaiji started producing their 30cm vinyl kits of the Toho Kong, the 67, and most notably the 62, which in my opinion, I think that is the most accurate representation of King Kong from 62, maybe outside of this one. But once I saw that, and once I got my hands on those kits, I was like, you know what? This Kong design is really epic. And again, it makes me go back to the film and brings back all those nostalgic memories of seeing the film. You know what I'm saying? Back then, you know, where I used to watch Godzilla films on a random Saturday afternoon. Like, I would get up early 7 o'clock that morning, watch cartoons from 7 to 12, watch WWF wrestling from 12 to 1. Then at 1, a Godzilla film will come on, namely King Kong vs. Godzilla. And again, just seeing this design after I become more of a fan of it just brings me back to those memories of me being a child when I didn't have a car payment and a mortgage and all these major responsibilities that we adults have now from being fans back then. You know what I'm saying? So because of that, I become more of a fan of this design of King Kong from 1962. Now, it's not my favorite, but at the same time, I enjoy it more than what I did, you know, up until a couple years ago, quite frankly. And again, that is how I got my hands on this awesome kit of Kong. So let's get up close and personal with this guy. Now, let's start off with the base here. Now, the base is a rocky base. Now, again, if you saw John LeGrand's video, of course, he jazzed up the base and made it look a lot more like Farou Island. Because basically, the whole sculpture of Kong recreates that photo that you see of Kong holding a rod like this with with his left foot, perched up on a rock like this. It basically recreates that scene. So Tony Cipriano did a great job recreating that scene. But that scene was from Mount Fuji. But again, John LeGrand jazzed it up like he was on Farou Island. Either way, both interpretations were cool. But the base here is really, really rocky. It's mountainous, whatever. It looks like the rocky texture of the Mount Fuji area where Kong was about to battle Godzilla, quite frankly. And Mark Sang did a phenomenal job, painting the base, giving it various colors, from the light beige like color of the dirt, the dark gray coloring of the rocks here, whatever. The base looks really, really good. Now, mind you, there's a peg on the rock right here that you have to insert Kong's foot in, and to be on the safe side, I added some super glue to ensure that Kong will not come off of this, quite frankly. Because Kong not being a bulky monster that has dorsal plates and a tail like a Godzilla or a Gigan or maybe a Mecha Godzilla to a certain extent, with him having a more humanoid, simple frame and form, he was more likely to topple over because he doesn't have that much weight to him. But to ensure that he doesn't fall off, I applied some super glue to both his feet to make him firmly attached to the base. And I also super glued the rocket to his hands. And there's another thing about Kong that I'll get to momentarily. It also came with the extra a pair of arms, where you can display Kong's arms where it's to the side, kind of like in this insert picture that I'm going to provide here. You can display Kong like that, or maybe you can display Kong with one arm up and one arm down, or you can display Kong where both arms are up and he's holding the rock. I opted for him having the rock held up above his head, because I think it's a more epic pose that way. So it was nice that the kit came with those alternate arms, whatever. But again, the base looks really, really good. Mark Sang did a phenomenal job with the base, and it is so amazing. Now let's go to Kong himself. Now, before we get to Kong, with the detail on the fur and everything, this is a really, really big size kit. Not too massive in terms of like girth or whatever, where it would take up too much shelf space. Well, quite frankly, you should put this thing in the shelf because it's so big. But it's a good size, whatever, but not too big. Because again, he does not have a tail or dorsal plates like a Godzilla or a Mecha Godzilla or a Gigan. But it is tall, it is tall, legit. Kong himself alone, just without the base, without the rock, is at 20 inches tall. Overall, the presentation here, it is at 27 inches tall. That's almost 3 feet tall. It's more than 2 feet tall, almost 2.5 feet tall. So it's a good size, and he goes perfectly in a way with the X Plus Gigantic Series Godzilla 1962 that you'll see in a size comparison later on. But Kong here looks really, really good. The detail on his fur looks amazing, quite frankly. Tony Cipriano did a phenomenal job with the sculpting of Kong's fur here. It has that kind of raggedy look that the suit look had, quite frankly, in the film. So each individual hair or strand of hair, basically all over his body, is really, 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 really good. His toenails, like a dark brown or dark black, whatever, looks really, really good. The toenails and feet are sculpted really well. His pectorals sculpted really well. His hands sculpted really well. Even the rock is sculpted well, in my opinion. And let's go to his face. Oh my God, he got the face right with this Kong. Cause I've seen so many different versions of this Kong in collectible form, and something is off about it. It does not look right. Again, between the Roto Kaiju and this one, they got it down pat, quite frankly. But I'm glad that Tony did a great job with the overall sculpt of the face. Just that, I won't say evil look, but it's just that recognizable look of Kong from this movie. And he did a great job from the eyes, from the eyebrows, to the nose, to the individually sculpted teeth. Just the overall sculpt of Kong, his head sculpt, his ears, again, the hands, the arms, just everything about the sculpt of Kong is absolutely perfect. Now let's go towards the paint job. Again, paint job, Mark Sang, you already know, he always does a great job. And you can apply that same magic to Kong here. He has done a great job with the paint job. The paint job is great, with the brown, reddish colors of Kong here, which was something that RKO, from what I understand, requested that Kong would be in King Kong vs. Godzilla. They want this Kong to look different than the 33. They had no problem licensing Kong out to Toho for them to use in King Kong vs. Godzilla, but there were some changes made to the character to distinguish him from the original Kong. So instead of him having like a blackish color like the original Kong did, they gave him a brown reddish color. And to also make it more appealing to children, since he was the de facto babyface in this film up against a villainous Godzilla. So that's why Kong has this brown reddish color on his body here, whatever. The color of the feet as well as the pectorials and his face here, just that light beige color, and on his hands, quite frankly, looks really, really good. I love the eyes. I love that GMK Godzilla-esque eyes, whatever. The reason why Kong's eyes like that, because I think the suit originally, at least the head of the suit, originally had pupils. What happened was the suit actor, when he donned the costume and put the head on, because again, it's a big bulky monster suit, and he was breathing heavily underneath the mask, that it fogged up the eyes where it drowned out the eyeballs. So it came across like Kong didn't have any pupils in his eyes. That's why Kong looks like that. Now there are some scenes, if you freeze frame it, you can actually see his eyeballs, whatever. But a lot of times when we see him, you barely notice him. Again, it comes across like he doesn't have any eyeballs, like he kind of favors the GMK Godzilla in a lot of ways. Now, I could have very easily asked Mark to put eyeballs, or at least pupils, into the sculpt here, but I kind of like having this Kong without the pupils, quite frankly. I think it looks more menacing and more ferocious that way. So again, he did a great job with the overall paint job of the eyes, the gums, the teeth, the face, the fur, everything. The base, the rock, from top to bottom. They did a great job. Both Tony Cipriano as well as Mark Sang-yang. My God, can you imagine if those two got together and did some magic? Oh my God, I would be their first customer. Just to be honest with you. But again, the whole presentation of Kong here on top of the base, again, the size of it, the detail of it, it's just a phenomenal sculpture. And I'm glad I was able to get to this piece sooner rather than later. So that's it with the backstory about me getting this piece, the person behind the sculpt, of course, Mark Sang-yang's contribution to the project. Again, in my opinion, one of the best, if not the best collectibles of King Kong from King Kong vs. Godzilla. Yes, yes, yes. Now, so let's do a couple size comparisons before we get up out of here. And again, you already know, I'm a huge King Kong fan. That should be nothing new to my viewers here. So I'm going to bring up some other King Kong collectibles I have in my collection in this first size comparison with this gigantic size version of Kong. So let's go with that first size comparison with pretty much all the Kongs I have in my collection right now. Okay, folks, here we are with the first size comparison, or should I say King Kong size comparison, or comparison in general, with pretty much a good chunk of the King Kong collectibles I have in my collection. And of course, the big guy in the back, right there on the far right, of course, the man in the hour, the Tony Cipriano gigantic size resin model kit of the 1962 King Kong from King Kong vs. Godzilla. So let's go from left to right. Of course, in the back next to him, the other gigantic size version of King Kong I have in my collection with the X Plus Gigantic Series, Rick exclusive edition of the 2021 version of King Kong from Godzilla vs. Kong. Down below him, I have the first 30cm Star Ace/X Plus 2017 version of Kong from Kong Skull Island. Below him, I have the Death for Real version of 2017 Kong. Him battling the octopus. Above him, I have the first ever Roto Kaiju 30cm kit of the 62 King Kong. Next to him, down the foreground, I have, that's the NECA 1933 version of Kong. Next to him, I have another Death for Real of King Kong, or Kong from Skull Island. And up above him, I have the drunk version of the Roto Kaiju 30cm kit of the 62 Kong. And of course, finally, on the far right, I have the second version of the Star Ace/X Plus version of Kong from 2017's Kong Skull Island. As you can see here, this is a cool comparison, or cool shot of the various Kongs I have in my collection. Again, I told y'all, for the longest time, I wasn't really a big fan of the 62 Kong, but again, seeing the Roto Kaiju versions of Kong made me come around on that design, and again, having the nostalgic factor for King Kong vs. Godzilla that I appreciate more now that I'm an adult. Those are the major two reasons why I come around on the King Kong 1962. Now, you're probably wondering, how would I rank them? Now, I don't know if I could rank every single one of them. I will probably go with my top three. My top three would go as follows from 3 to 1. Number 3 will probably be, you know what? Scratch that. I go with my top 5. Okay, number 5 will be the first edition of Kong from 2017, right there on the far left. Next, I would go with the second version of Kong from 2017. Of course, both of those figures courtesy of X Plus and Star Ace. Then it will be the X Plus gigantic version of the 2021 Kong. Even though he's the man of the hour, I probably would go with the Tony Cipriano Kong as number 2. And my favorite one will be the first ever version of Kong from Roto Kaiju. Again, I love the Tony Cipriano Kong, but it is something about the Roto Kaiju that will always make it a step above the rest. You know what I'm saying? Now, don't get me wrong. The Cipriano Kong comes really close. Really close. You know what I'm saying? His size alone kind of makes him worthy to be number 1 in my opinion. But it's something about the 30 centimeter Roto Kaiju Kong from King Kong vs. Godzilla that I love so much. But that's how I would rank them. Why don't you let me know in the comment section which one of these will be your favorite? Would it be the X Plus Gigantic Kong? Would it be the Cipriano Kong? Would it be the Roto Kaiju Kong? Just let me know in the comment section and we'll definitely go from there. So that's it with the first size comparison or Kong size comparison. And you know what? Let's go with the final size comparison. And again, King Kong was not the only monster in King Kong vs. Godzilla. So let's bring up the X Plus Gigantic Series version of the 1962 Godzilla, the King Goji himself, and see how that gigantic pairs up with the gigantic Kong. Let's get this on right now. The gigantic size God of Farou Island versus the gigantic size King of the Monsters in its final size comparison. So let's do that, ladies and gentlemen, right now. Alright folks, here we are with the last, final, and most epic size comparison. And yes, alongside the man in the hour, the Tony Cipriano giant resin model kit sculpture of 1962 King Kong, I have his epic opponent from that film. Yes, with the X Plus Gigantic Series 1962 version of Godzilla, also known as the King Goji. And this is such an epic size comparison. Both gigantic size versions of both Kong and Godzilla. You can't get no better than this. Oh my God. Two of the most famous gigantic monsters in the world right here. This signifies their first ever meeting. East versus West. God versus King. The God of Farou Island versus the King of the Monsters as they beat the crap out of each other on the slopes of Mount Fuji. And this is so great. Now, as you can see here, I have Godzilla perched on top of this scratch built base that I had Mark St. Yang made for me. Now, and Godzilla looks great upon the base when you have Godzilla displayed alone. Without Kong being there, quite frankly. Now, I did that on purpose. I had Mark make this base for me because, again, I knew the size and dimensions of the Kong, and I knew I wanted to pair Kong with this version of Godzilla. But again, without the base, Kong would tower over Godzilla, and I didn't want that to happen. I didn't want that to happen, excuse me. Because again, Kong should always be smaller in comparison to Godzilla, because that's what we've seen in both the movies, 62 and 2021. So again, I sent Mark the dimensions of Kong, the dimensions of the gigantic Godzilla, and he had this base to beef up Godzilla's size, where he appears bigger and taller than Kong here. And as you can see here, the way he painted the base on Kong and the way he built and painted the base of Godzilla, he did a great job where both bases kind of complement each other. And the base itself of Godzilla looks really, really good, you know, with the foliage, the green foliage, the trees, and that little ocean or the remnants of the ocean on the outskirts of the base. It looks really, really good. Paired with Godzilla, with King Kong here, and again, you got this epic shot of these two gigantic size collectibles of both the King of the Monsters and the God of Farou Island. And again, it looks great. Kong looking like he's about to bash that rock on Godzilla. Godzilla's perched like he's about to blow his atomic breath on Kong and burn Kong. Again, I think even the most jaded fan will admit that this is a great, great size comparison. Again, these two iconic monsters, gigantic size if you will, from the epic film of King Kong vs. Godzilla. Again, as I said earlier, You can't get any better than this. Why don't you tell me in the comment section what you think about this size comparison? Is it great? Do you like it? Or whatever the case may be. But I know from this fan right here, I absolutely love it. And it's so awesome. So that's it with all the size comparisons with Kong, with the other version of Kong I have in my collection. Of course, with the awesome King of the Monsters here. Again, whether you pair him alone, whether you pair him with other Kongs, whether you pair him with this Godzilla. Again, this is such an epic piece of the 1962 Kong, courtesy of the awesome Tony Cipriano. Yes. So that's it with all the size comparisons. So let's go to the final commentary portion of the video with my final thoughts of the resin model kit, gigantic size resin model kit of the Tony Cipriano sculpture of King Kong 1962 from King Kong vs. Godzilla. So let's go to that final commentary portion of the video right now. Okay, folks, I'm back with my final thoughts of the gigantic size resin model kit of the Tony Cipriano sculpture of 1962 King Kong from his epic appearance from King Kong vs. Godzilla. 10 out of 10. This thing is so amazing. The sheer size, the presentation, the base, the rock, the likeness, the fur, everything about this piece, it is absolutely perfect and flawless in my opinion. And again, even though I kind of favor the Roto Kaiju 30cm vinyl kit more than this one, just a little bit, ever so slightly, you know what I'm saying? But again, it's something about that version of Kong that is perfect in my opinion. Not trying to say this one is not perfect, but I kind of prefer that one just a little bit more. But I will say in terms of gigantic size versions of the 62 Kong, there's not too many out there. Besides this one, I don't think there's any out there besides maybe for some customs that may be out there or whatever. But again, this is, in my opinion, the best gigantic size version of King Kong 1962 that you will ever find. So if you're able to find one in the aftermarket, or if you're going to G-Fest at the time of this recording, G-Fest is 2 weeks from this weekend. So if you're able to go up to G-Fest and go to the Kaiju Modelers table, why don't you ask them if they do have the Tony Cipriano kit of Kong and get it. You know what I'm saying? Again, there are so many great artists in our community that you can contract if you can't build and paint this thing yourself. Again, just secure the kit and worry about building and painting later. But again, just get it, especially if you're a fan of this version of Kong, if you're a fan of King Kong vs. Godzilla, or if you want something to go up against your S Plus gigantic size Godzilla. Look no further than this guy right here, because this thing is absolutely amazing. Again, whether you pair him by himself, or like I said, up against the S Plus gigantic Godzilla 62, or with other Kongs you may have in your collection, either way, it is a one-of-a-kind quality piece. And again, it took me a few years to come around on him, but I'm glad I finally did, because again, I was aware of this kit a few years ago, several years ago in fact, but again, you know, I wasn't into the model kit game at that point, you know, whatever. I'm kicking myself in the foot now, because I could have got this kit a long time ago if the interest was there. But again, better late than never. And again, thank you to Charles Blankenship and of course Mark Sang-Yang for making this happen for me. And again, I feel real bad I didn't cover it last year on his anniversary, quite frankly, because I covered the KOC King Goji 40cm kit, you know what I'm saying? I covered Godzilla, but I was not able to get the Kong, which is kind of surprising considering how much of a huge King Kong fan I am. But again, better late than never, big guy. You know what I'm saying? I'm glad to have you. And before we get up out of here, and again, I just mentioned my review of the KOC King Goji that I did last year. Please check it out if you haven't just yet. And in that video, I gave you my top 3 favorite moments involving Godzilla from King Kong vs. Godzilla. So might as well extend the same courtesy and treatment to Kong. So I'm going to give you my top 3 favorite moments involving King Kong from King Kong vs. Godzilla. The first moment is when he appears. Because again, even though, again, King Kong was the baby face of this film, or at least the de facto baby face. Again, he takes top billing, so in a lot of ways, he is the star of the film, despite the fact that they showed Godzilla before him, quite frankly. But I have to say, the build-up, the slow burn build-up to his appearance on Farou Island, I thought was handled really, really well. You know what I'm saying? When the people go to the island for the first time, or the reporters, or wherever, or the representatives from the pharmaceutical company go to Kong's Island, you know, and they're fraternizing with the natives, and then you hear Kong's roar. You don't see him, but you know he's there. And then later on, when the octopus attacks the village, and then all of a sudden Kong comes brushing behind the wall, he tears open the wall and just engages the octopus. Again, I actually thought, you know what, both entrances of Godzilla and Kong in that film is absolutely amazing. Honestly, I have to say, I kind of favor Godzilla's entrance more from the iceberg, but take nothing away from Kong's appearance when they do reveal him on Farou Island. Again, he breaks through the wall and engages with the octopus. Again, the slow burn build up to his appearance, I thought was handled really well. That's one of my favorite moments involving King Kong from this film. Now, my second favorite moment involving King Kong is when they are transporting Kong from Farou Island to Japan, and they are intercepted midway through by the Japanese military. And they're telling him to keep Kong away from Japan, which really was kind of smart in a film that's over the top and not too realistic, you know what I'm saying? The idea being that look, we already got one giant monster, Godzilla, in our backyard. The last thing we need is another one of these things roaming around our backyard. So that's actually pretty smart for them to want to keep Kong away. But then they inadvertently, you know, because he's strapped to a raft filled with dynamite as a failsafe, they end up blowing the dynamite on the raft. They blow Kong off the raft. All of a sudden, you just see the remnants of the raft, the destroyed raft. You don't see Kong. All you see like this bubbling water, and you're wondering whether he survived or not. All of a sudden, he just pops up from beneath the waves and just roars, and he just looks so epic coming from beneath the waves, basically saying, yeah, it didn't work. And you know what? That was so cool because it signifies that this version of Kong is a lot different and a lot more powerful than the original Kong. Because let's face it, that version of Kong, as iconic as that movie is, that is a less powerful, less sturdy version of Kong. It is not like this one where he's like on par with Godzilla in a lot of ways. So I like how they demonstrated that this Kong cannot be easily defeated by like dynamite or conventional weapons or whatever the case may be. It just shows how tough Kong is, and he would need to be going up against Godzilla later on. But again, I just love that moment where he just rises up out of nowhere and you hear that music, that stop music from the creature from the Black Lagoon, and he's roaring, and then you know he's on his way to confront Godzilla for the first time. I just love that moment. So that's my second favorite moment involving King Kong from King Kong versus Godzilla. And my third favorite moment is when finally we see Godzilla and King Kong beat the crap out of each other on the slopes of Mount Fuji, with King Kong kind of being the aggressor in a lot of ways. But that, even though it's funny, that moment where Kong charges Godzilla, when Godzilla has his back to him, and then Godzilla just turns around real fast and kicks him in the gut, and his legs go up in the air, and he goes flying, rolling down the mountain. I have to admit, that was really funny. Even to this day, when I see that, and Godzilla just kicks him real hard and sends Kong flying down the mountain, I really have a fun time with that. I laugh at that. That amuses me, you know what I'm saying? But then when Kong is revived by that lightning storm, and you see him just laying there after Godzilla bashed him in the head and knock him out, and you see the lightning strike his face, and because you know they established in this film that Kong grows stronger from electricity. Then all of a sudden he just rises up like the Undertaker. Remember how the Undertaker used to rise up when he was flat on his back in the middle of the ring like Kong was? And then all of a sudden Paul Bearer would hold up the urn and he would just sit up like a zombie. That's the same way King Kong rose up, and then he just grabs Godzilla by the tail and just whips him around. That is my third favorite moment involving King Kong and King Kong versus Godzilla. Because how many times have we seen Godzilla take a monster by his tail and just lift him up and just slam him to the earth many, many times? We see him do that with Hedra, Megalon, King Ghidorah, but it was nice to see Godzilla get a taste of his own medicine. Now he knows what it's like to have somebody grab him by the tail and just whip him around and slam him. But again, that's my third favorite moment involving King Kong. That moment when he rises up out of the ocean and when they finally reveal his full look on Farou Island when he breaks through the wall. So those are my top 3 favorite moments of King Kong from King Kong versus Godzilla. Why don't you let me know what are your favorite moments of King Kong from King Kong versus Godzilla? You know what I'm saying? And let me know in the comment section. But again, I love that movie. And again, just thinking about it, talking about it brings back all those nostalgic memories. You know what I'm saying? Again, that was one of the films that really changed my life in terms of me being a fan. And I will always acknowledge it, and I will always have fun with it. And even though, again, it may be dated and cheesy and goofy by today's standards, but again, without that film, I'm sure a lot of us will not be here being fans in the community today. So I think we owe a lot to this film, quite frankly. But in the meantime, if you can find this guy for a good price, and if you want a good gigantic size, realistic version of Kong from King Kong vs. Godzilla, you want the absolute best one, look no further than this guy right here. Trust me when I say that. Yes, yes, yes. So that pretty much concludes my review of the Tony Cipriano gigantic resin model kit of the 1962 version of King Kong. Yes, yes, yes. From his epic appearance from the epic, campy, fun flick that again made all of us fans in the first place, King Kong vs. Godzilla. You have any questions, comment down in the comment section. Hit me on Facebook via Let's Be Channels. We'll definitely go from there. Yes, once again, this is so cool. Again, if you can find one in the aftermarket, again, finding one is easier said than done, but it's not impossible. As you can see, I was able to find one, you know, going on 3 or 4 years after the figure came out in 2019. But again, if I was able to find one, I'm sure if you're persistent, you can find one. Or, like I said, if you go into G-Fest in a couple weeks, just hit up the Kaiju Modelers table and ask them if they have this kit in their inventory. And if they do, get it. Again, especially if you're a fan of King Kong or a fan of King Kong vs. Godzilla, you owe it to yourself to go after this epic piece. Again, gigantic size, realistic, you know what I'm saying, an epic presentation, the base and the rock here. Again, you can't go wrong with this figure or this statue. I highly recommend it. Yes, yes, yes. So now let's keep the model kit coverage going. And again, I put this review off for the longest time, but you know what? I'm done procrastinating. I'm finally going to get to it. The KOC 40cm model kit I have not gotten to yet. I've done reviews of the 54, the 62, the 64, and the 55. But now I'm finally going to get this review out to you. The last 40cm kit from KOC I have in my collection with Godzilla 1999 from Godzilla 1999 Millennium, also known as Godzilla 2000. That will be the next review on Leslie Chambers Kaiju Reviews, and I can't wait to get that out for y'all. Yes, yes, yes. But again, epic, awesome, amazing. What can you say about the winner of King Kong vs. Godzilla? You know I had to get that dig in there. So ladies and gentlemen, I finally give to you the epic resin model kit of the Tony Cipriano gigantic size version of the 1962 King Kong from its epic appearance from King Kong vs. Godzilla. Yes, yes, yes. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it. And I will see y'all again on next figure and move review. Alright? Y'all take it easy. And you know he won. It was no draw. You know he won. Stop debating. Stop going back and forth. Stop kidding yourself. Just accept it. If you can accept Martha won in 64, you can accept that King Kong won here. Just accept it. Alright? Alright, I'm out of here. Take it easy.
Hola,